Hello, and welcome to Prayer of the First Light. If you want to start each day with words that transform your life and bring you closer to God, this is the right place. Just subscribe to the channel now, activate the notification bell, and walk with us on this journey of faith and inspiration. There was a young man named Elias, a talented violinist who dreamed of playing before thousands of people. But life seemed to mock this dream. He played in empty streets, while the wind carried the sound of his instrument into nothingness. Each note was a silent prayer, a request for God to hear him. "Does heaven hear me?" he wondered, looking up. Deep down, Elias believed that God's silence was the echo of his own insignificance, until the silence began to teach him more than any applause could. One night, tired and on the verge of giving up, Elias put away his violin and walked aimlessly through the city. He sat down under a bridge and began to cry. Suddenly, a child approached him, dirty, barefoot, eyes shining with curiosity, and asked, "Why did you stop playing?" Elias replied, "Because no one hears me." The girl smiled and said, "But I heard, and it made me forget my hunger for a moment." That sentence pierced Elias's heart like an arrow. He realized that perhaps his music had never been for crowds, but for invisible hearts that needed it. In the following days, Elias began playing again, not to be applauded, but to heal. Each note was a prayer, each melody a seed sown into the invisible. People began to stop, not for the spectacle, but for the peace they felt listening to him. The sound of his violin began to echo in distant streets, and without realizing it, what had been small became immense. What seemed like a forgotten talent was being used by God to transform lives. His faith, which had previously depended on results, now flourished in the simple act of continuing. Months later, a music producer heard Elias playing in a square. She was so moved that she invited him to record an album. Elias accepted, but said, "If I do this, I want the first track to be played in hospitals, orphanages, and shelters. That's where my faith was born." Success came, but he never forgot what he learned in silence. God's purpose is not to be seen, but to serve. The music that once seemed aimless now reached the entire world, bringing hope to those who had forgotten how to believe. Years later, in an interview, Elias was asked about the secret of his success. He smiled and replied, "The secret is to keep playing, even when heaven seems silent, because God's silence is never absence. It is preparation." He said that in every note he played, he still saw the face of that girl under the bridge. She was a reminder that God's love manifests itself in life's small auditions, when no one sees but all heaven hears. And so, Elias lived the rest of his days playing for an invisible audience, knowing that each melody was a prayer disguised as art. His story spread across the internet, inspiring millions not to give up when all seems quiet. Because silence, in truth, is the sound of God working behind the scenes. And when the right time comes, what seemed forgotten blossoms in such a grand way that even the world stops to listen. Friends, perhaps you felt your prayers lost in silence, as if your words ascended to heaven and returned unanswered. But know this: heaven is never silent when a faithful heart speaks. God's timing is not our timing. And what seems like a delay is actually preparation. He works in details you can't even imagine, and when everything seems quiet, that's when he's most active. Stay strong, because no tear is wasted before him. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Psalm 35. Sometimes it seems no one sees your efforts, that the good you do disappears in the routine of the world. But the God who watches the secrets of the heart rewards in plain sight. He doesn't ignore silent kindness, gestures of love, or the battles you fight in silence. What is invisible to human eyes is precious in God's eyes. Keep planting even when no one applauds, because the fruit comes in its own time. And your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Matthew 6:6. There are days when faith feels like a heavy burden, and you wonder, is it worth continuing? It is in these moments that God whispers in your heart, "Child, don't stop now. I am shaping something great in you." Every prayer, every act of faith, every time you choose not to give up, is a seed being sown in the soil of promise. It may not bloom today, but it will. Those who sow in tears will reap with shouts of joy. Psalm 126:5. Perhaps you are tired of waiting for an answer, tired of believing when everything seems to say otherwise. But waiting is where faith matures. When God seems silent, He is testing your trust, not to punish you but to prepare you. What is being born in the unseen is greater than you can imagine. Hold firm, because the promise has not died. It is simply growing in secret. Though it tarries, wait patiently, for it will surely come. Habakkuk 2:3. God never promised an easy journey, but He did promise a constant presence. When you cross the valley, He goes with you. When the weight seems unbearable, He is the one who sustains you. It's not about understanding the process, but about trusting in the purpose. What you face today will be the testimony that inspires others tomorrow. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Psalm 23:4. Don't underestimate the power of your small beginnings. God doesn't measure greatness by the size of the stage, but by faithfulness in secret. What you do may seem small in the eyes of the world, but it is much in God's eyes. Keep watering the seed He gave you, even when no one is looking. In His timing, what seemed insignificant will become extraordinary. Whoever is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. Luke 16:10. Many give up because they don't see immediate results, but true faith doesn't live on results. It lives on trust. Miracles don't happen to those who watch time, but to those who trust even without seeing. God is writing invisible chapters of your story, and the ending will be better than you imagine. For we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. When you pray and nothing changes, perhaps God is changing you before changing your circumstances. Sometimes He delays His answer to align your heart, to prepare you for what comes next. Waiting is a training ground for faith, an invitation to dependence. And when you learn to rest in the midst of not knowing, miracles happen naturally. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. God has not forgotten the promises He made to you. He is not a man to lie, nor does He fail in His words. Even when everything seems at a standstill, there is a movement happening behind the scenes in heaven. Keep believing, even when weary, even when hurt, because the harvest is certain. God's faithfulness does not depend on time, but on His nature. He who promised is faithful and will also fulfill it. 1 Thessalonians 5:24. So don't be discouraged. The God who began the good work in you will not stop halfway. Every moment of pain, every prayer that seemed unheard is being woven into a perfect plan. Stay strong, keep believing, keep sowing good, because the harvest is coming. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Galatians 6:9. There are promises that are not born from human lips, but from the heart of God. They are not illusions. They are spiritual certainties planted in eternal soil. When you hold firm, even when nothing seems to change, you are watering the seed that will one day blossom. Time may seem slow, answers may seem distant, but God is never late. He shapes your heart as He prepares the way. True faith is not the absence of waiting, it is trust in the midst of it. And those who trust do not give up, they only mature. Keep believing, even without seeing. For the invisible is the territory where God works. The righteous will live by faith. Romans 1:17. Perseverance is the bridge between what you pray for and what you will see happen. It's easy to believe when everything is favorable, but it is in silence that faith is tested and strengthened. When you insist on following, even without understanding, heaven watches you and notes every step. Nothing watered with tears will be forgotten by God. He transforms the desert into fertile ground and weariness into new breath. Keep walking, even slowly, because each step of faith is an act of war against doubt. In due time, the invisible will become visible, and those who sow in tears will reap with joy. Psalm 126:5. God's not yet doesn't always mean never. Sometimes he's simply preparing you to sustain what he's asked for. What comes too soon can be lost quickly. So, if the answer seems delayed, understand. He is maturing you. Waiting isn't punishment, it's training. The promise remains alive, even when everything seems silent. God works in processes, not in haste. He doesn't rush, but he never fails. Wait with faith, not anxiety. There is a time for every purpose under heaven. Ecclesiastes 3:1. There are days when getting up is an act of courage. Praying is a victory, and continuing to believe is the greatest miracle. Faith doesn't eliminate weariness, but it gives you the strength not to give up. What seems small today is exactly what God uses to test your heart. He doesn't seek perfection, he seeks constancy. And it is this constancy that attracts his favor. When strength fails, remember the God who called you does not forget who you are. He replenishes you with renewed courage, but those who wait for the Lord will renew their strength. Isaiah 40:31. God never wastes pain. Every tear has a purpose. Every desert has a lesson. While you feel stuck, he is moving invisible mountains. The wait may seem long, but it is exactly the time your heart needs to mature. He's aligning the pieces, preparing encounters, opening paths. When everything seems out of control, remember, there is still an author writing your story, and he writes perfectly. Indeed, all things work together for good to those who love God. Romans 8:28. Faith is like a seed. No one sees it sprout, but one day it will break through the earth. So too is God's action in your life. He works silently, hidden from the eyes of the world. And when the moment comes, nothing can stop what he has planned. The secret is not to uproot what you planted just because you haven't seen it sprout yet. Trust. God is watering what you prayed for we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. There are days when the sky seems closed, but it's just God preparing a new season. What seems like a delay today will be a testimony tomorrow. He never abandons those who remain. No matter how tired you are, keep trusting. Your effort is not in vain. Every not yet from God hides an already doing. Believe me, the process is part of the promise. Be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. 1 Corinthians 15:58. When everything seems to be falling apart, that's when faith proves its worth. Trust in God is not based on what you feel, but on who he is. Even in chaos, he remains sovereign. Even in pain, he remains good. And it is in this certainty that the soul finds rest. Talk is easy. Believing when everything is against you is genuine faith. And those who believe never lose, they only learn. Though the fig tree does not blossom, I will rejoice in the Lord. Habakkuk 3:17-18. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to keep trusting. Control has never been in your hands, but always in God's. When he seems silent, it's because he's working on details you can't yet see. Don't rush time, just be ready for it when it arrives. Your faith is the passport that takes you to the fulfillment of the promise. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will bring it to pass. Psalm 37:5. In the end, everything watered with faith will flourish. What seemed impossible will become a testimony. God does not forget those who trust in Him, and the harvest comes to those who sow steadfastly. Keep believing even when the ground seems dry. The same God who began the good work is faithful to complete it. Wait with hope, pray with courage, and believe with all your heart. He who promised is faithful. Hebrews 10:23. You might look around and think nothing is happening, that your prayers are lost in silence and your efforts seem futile. But God never stops working in the shadows of the invisible. He works in the gaps of time, preparing what your eyes cannot yet see. Sometimes the sky seems closed, but it is only the harbinger of a new season about to dawn. When everything seems still, that is when He is most active. Therefore, trust even when you don't understand, because what seems like a delay is just God's timing aligning with your destiny. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Psalm 35. There are times when God's silence feels like absence, but it is in those moments that He tests the steadfastness of your faith. Many give up because they confuse silence with abandonment, but silence is the language of preparation. When Joseph was forgotten in prison, God was not silent. He was preparing the throne. The same is true for you. While you wait, heaven writes the next chapter of your story. Stand firm even without understanding. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Philippians 1:6. Do not despise the small days, because it is in them that God tests the faithfulness of your heart. David did not begin in the palace. He began tending sheep, in silence, far from the applause, but with his heart focused on purpose. God sees what no one else sees, and He honors what is done with love and perseverance. Every act of faith is a seed in the soil of eternity, and in due time it will blossom. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. Galatians 6:9. You don't need to understand the plan to trust the planner. God doesn't reveal the entire map, but He always shows the next step. Sometimes faith is walking without seeing the ground, trusting that He will hold your feet. When Peter walked on the water, the sea didn't remain firm. It was faith that kept him standing. So it is with you. It's not the path that sustains you. It's the voice of the one who called you. We walk by faith, not by sight. Corinthians 5:7. Many stop because they measure success by speed, but God measures it by endurance. He's not impressed by those who start quickly, but by those who keep going even when tired. Abraham waited years for a promise, and even when everything seemed impossible, he chose to believe. True faith isn't fueled by results, but by trust. So, keep going, even when times seem against you. Against hope, he believed. Romans 4:18. Obedience doesn't always bring applause, but it always brings purpose. When Noah began building the ark, the world called him crazy. But he didn't need people's approval because he had God's guidance. There are times when you will also be misunderstood, and that's okay. Obedience is walking with God, even when no one understands why. It is better to obey than to sacrifice. 1 Samuel 15:22. God doesn't need an army to change your life. He only needs your faith. A small gesture can move heaven and transform destinies. Moses raised his staff, and the sea parted. Elijah prayed, and fire descended. Daniel prayed, and the lions fell silent. Never underestimate the power of sincere faith. A simple yes in the midst of chaos can open paths that fear tried to close. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, Matthew 17:20. When your emotions scream at you to give up, remember, faith doesn't depend on what you feel, but on what you believe. There will be days when your heart will doubt, but faith is choosing to continue, even trembling. Jesus wept, but he didn't give up. Paul suffered, but he didn't stop. Strength isn't in never falling, but in getting up every time you do. For the righteous will live by faith. Hebrews 10:38. Everything that seems lost can be just the beginning of something new. God specializes in new beginnings. He transforms deserts into paths and pain into purpose. What hurts you today may be the testimony that heals others tomorrow. Nothing is wasted in the hands of the Creator. He takes what the world calls an end and transforms it into a beginning. Behold, I make all things new. Revelation 21:5. So, even without seeing results, remain faithful. The process hurts, but it is through it that God molds you. Each step of obedience is building something eternal. Faith is not an escape from reality. It is the decision to believe that the invisible is more powerful than the visible. Keep planting, even without seeing fruit yet. Because when God decides to act, no desert remains barren. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Psalm 126:5. When everything around you seems to say, stop, dare to continue. Because hope is not just a feeling, it is a living force that pushes the soul forward even when your feet are tired. It is the silent fire that rekindles your faith in the cold dawns of doubt. When the world crumbles, it is hope that whispers, there is still a way. And those who choose to follow this whisper discover that God never abandons those who choose to remain. Those who wait for the Lord will renew their strength. Isaiah 40:31. There are days when prayer seems in vain and God's silence seems deafening. But it is in this silence that He works most. It is when you bend your knees feeling nothing that heaven moves in your favor. Every tear is an invisible seed. Every prayer is a root growing deep. Keep praying, even when you see nothing blossom. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Psalm 35. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is divine wisdom. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but frees the future. It's the courageous act of saying, this won't hold me back anymore. When you let go of the pain, God holds your soul. Forgiveness is the gateway to peace, and those who pass through it find lightness where there was once heaviness. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Luke 6:37. Loving again after being hurt is an act of faith, not naivety. It's believing that God's love is greater than human deception. To love is to reflect the Creator Himself, even when the mirror of life is cracked. Don't close your heart, because it's there that miracles happen. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. 1 Corinthians 13:7. To believe again is to challenge the impossible. It's to look at chaos and say, God is still here. Faith doesn't ignore pain, it walks through it. Even when fear screams, faith whispers louder, keep believing. Because what seems long is not lost, it is being prepared. Then for we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. The weary soul is also loved by God. He doesn't demand perfection, He only asks that you not stop. Sometimes, the greatest act of faith is simply to take a deep breath and take another step. Discouragement is the desert of the soul, but even in the desert there is manna. Trust, because God still makes flowers bloom in the dust. And I will never leave you nor forsake you. Joshua 1:5. When the soil seems dry, keep sowing. Faith is planting even when there's no rain in the forecast. It's watering the invisible, believing that something is sprouting beneath the soil of waiting. No seed of trust is wasted. God sees what was planted in silence. Those who sow in tears will reap with joy. Psalm 126, 5. God honors the persistent, not the perfect. He blesses those who remain when everything seems to be falling apart. Heaven moves through steadfast hearts, not sure steps. Even when the mind says, "It's over," the Spirit whispers, "It's only just begun." Persevere, because victory belongs to those who don't give up. Be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. 1 Corinthians 15:58. Hope is not an illusion, it is a covenant. It connects your today to what God has promised for tomorrow. When you hold tightly to this invisible rope, the impossible becomes a bridge. God works in the gap between what you pray and what He accomplishes. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for He who promised is faithful. Hebrews 10:23. So, even if it seems easier to give up, keep going. Keep praying, loving, forgiving, and believing. Because every act of faith is a flame that defies the darkness. And when the world sees you standing where many have fallen, they will know that it was God who sustained you. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. If life seems to have stopped, if you feel trapped in a long wait, remember God's silence is never absence, it is preparation. When nothing happens on the outside, it is because God is building something on the inside. Waiting is not punishment. It is a training ground for faith. Don't settle for less than what the Lord has already declared for you, because the promise is still alive, even when everything seems dead. Keep trusting, even if time tires you, because time never tires God. He is still in control of every second. He who began a good work is faithful to complete it. Philippians 1:6. Hope isn't sitting around waiting. It's getting up, even when weary, believing that tomorrow can change. Persevering is fighting when no one else believes. It's continuing to pray when your heart wants to give up. It's remaining steadfast even when the winds blow against you. Hope isn't an emotion, it's a decision, and every day you must choose it anew. When you refuse to give up, heaven moves in your favor. Those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. Isaiah 40:31. God hasn't forgotten what He promised you. He's simply preparing you to endure what's to come. Sometimes what seems like a delay is actually protection. He doesn't want to give you something that will destroy you inside. So, if what you asked for hasn't arrived yet, trust. It's because He's molding you first. The process hurts, but it's in this time that your faith takes root. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Psalm 35. Every promise carries a time of testing, and every test hides a purpose. If you're being tested, it's because something great is being prepared. God doesn't waste pain. Every tear is the seed of something eternal. Stay strong, even without understanding. True faith doesn't need sight to keep moving. When everything seems uncertain, hold on to the certainty of who God is. We walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. It's not about speed, it's about constancy. What comes quickly goes quickly. But what God builds over time endures. While you wait, He is teaching you to depend on Him, not on circumstances. It is in this waiting that your character is honed and your soul learns to rest. The world says, give up. But the Spirit whispers, wait a little longer. Be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. 1 Corinthians 15:58. Sometimes, what you call delay is just heaven's perfect timing. God is never late. He aligns Himself with the exact moment, so stop comparing your timing with others. Every promise has its own clock. What is yours will not be lost. It will only arrive ripe. When God says, now, no door can remain closed. At the right time I, the Lord, will bring it about. Isaiah 60:22. While you wait, don't stop worshipping. Worship is the sound of hope. She transforms the desert into an altar and weariness into strength. Sing even with tears, pray even without feeling, because worshipping in waiting is declaring, I trust in you, even without answers. This is the kind of faith that touches God's heart and moves the impossible. In everything give thanks. 1 Thessalonians 5:18. The enemy wants you to believe it's the end, but the end, in God's hands, is always a new beginning in disguise. When all seems lost, it is there that he begins something new. Every door that closes is a divine direction, not a rejection. What is yours will not be taken away, only redirected. Behold, I am making all things new. Revelation 21:5. Waiting is not an empty time. It is the time when God is teaching you to see things differently. He is exchanging your haste for purpose, your fear for maturity. So, take a deep breath and trust. What is to come will be so great that every second of waiting will make sense. Who did for all things work together for good to those who love God, Romans 8:28. Today, decide not to give up. Decide to remain, even when weary. Decide to believe, even when you can't see. God's promise has no expiration date. It has a set time. Stay strong, because the story is not over yet, and the ending is already written. Victory. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial. James 1:12. Lord, sometimes the soul is silent, and the heart feels that heaven has grown distant, but it is in this silence that I find you. It is in this emptiness that your voice becomes soft. When words are lost, you still listen, every tear, every sigh, every note of life that touches me. Teach me, Father, to understand that your silence is not absence. It is care. It is preparation. It is the sound of your love working behind the invisible. Even when I don't see it, you are moving the impossible. Dear God, I often feel like Elijah, playing to empty streets, trying to spread beauty in a world that seems deaf. But I know that, for you, no melody is wasted. Every simple gesture has eternal value. Every act of faith, however small, echoes in your heart. Make me understand that the purpose is not in the applause, but in the impact that love has on invisible hearts. Use me, Lord, even if no one sees, because your gaze is enough to sustain me. Father, when hope weakens and weariness visits me, give me the strength to keep playing. Even when the wind seems to carry away the sound of my faith, renew in me the desire to remain, even if the results don't appear, because I know that your timing is perfect, and what is silence today will be song tomorrow. Transform my pain into prayer, and my waiting into learning. May I understand that miracles are born first in the secret, before blossoming in the visible. Lord, if one day I forget why I started, remind me of the smile of that girl who heard a melody and forgot her hunger for a moment. Remind me that every gesture of love is food for someone, that every word spoken with faith is healing for a tired soul. Help me not to measure my worth by the size of the audience, but by the sincerity with which I serve. Because your purpose does not seek fame, it seeks fidelity, and that is where I want to remain. Steal my gift. May your Spirit remind me that there are still hearts hungry for hope, and that each note I play is a seed of faith sown in the invisible. Do not let me be stopped by silence, because silence is your favorite stage for action. Teach me to play with my heart, to live by faith, and to trust even when the applause ceases. And finally, Lord, I want to thank you for the sound that cannot be heard, but that transforms, for the silence that teaches, and for the waiting that shapes. Thank you for transforming small notes into eternal symphonies, small gestures into hidden miracles. May my life continue to be a prayer played in your name, and may the world, even without seeing, feel your love through me. Because I know that when everything seems quiet, all of heaven is listening. Amen. If this prayer touched your heart, write amens in the comments. Share this video with someone you love and click the like button to help us bring this message to more people. Subscribe now to the Prayer of the First Light channel.